elaborate what you were using the trees to describe for us?
Mm. Well, I was just honestly elaborating on the imagery that's already given to us in scripture. So when we're going to talk about the flourishing human life, we have the picture of the tree in Psalm 1. And I think that as a student of literature, as a worker with words, I think that these are not incidental. Like, I don't think that the psalmist said, "Oh, I don't know. What should we compare, human life, a flourishing human life?" I guess we'll just say trees, like, I think that the tree actually has a lot to teach us about flourishing human life, just that when you look at the root systems, for example, one of the things I kind of got interested in this, and I mean, these are just the things that happen as I start to get interested in something. It's like all of a sudden, you're learning all kinds of things. But we were in Vancouver actually, and we were visiting some of the old forests there in the Northwest. And they were talking about we know now about trees, that they have all these fungal networks among the roots. And so trees actually are communicating to each other all the time. They're passing warnings about weather and pests. And I mean, it's incredible to think about. And this is to speak to belonging, that when so often we think about Psalm 1, oh, wow, that's that solitary oak that you pass and through the Indiana. I don't know. You're on Highway 65 and Interstate 65, and you're like, look at that one oak. That must be what God meant in Psalm 1. Well, no, he probably actually meant the Redwood forest, where we are belonging to each other. There's a lot of strength and protection. There's all these kind of crazy ways where the canopy, we know all there are these different ways that, there's the understory and different levels within the forest, and how that is all working together to shelter each other. But one of the things that's very interesting to think about roots is just the American redwoods compared to the European redwoods. A lot of the European redwoods were planted to be in these really stately gardens, and they had very small root balls. The root balls were trimmed, and so they just could never grow to a certain majesty because of the ways that their root balls had been trimmed. And it just made me think about just early traumas in our lives and ways that make it very difficult for us to learn to even belong. I think I'm talking about it a lot in the belonging chapter, because I think that's something we have to learn, is to belong to each other. So I think that God's given us an amazing repertoire of imagery in scripture. The vine would be another one, vines and branches. I mean, if you start to think about how vineyards are cultivated, like, I just think there's a lot there for us to think about. This is all very organic imagery, which is set against the kind of like machine kinds of things that are predominant in an industrial productive society. So I think like there's a seasonality. One of the things I think is just really beautiful to think about trees, to think about vines, is that there generally is a seasonality to that. There's a wintering season for trees. And what if we could embrace that for our lives, to think about it? I'm in a season where, like, I feel like I'm just dropping leaves, and I'm just bare on the branch, but the beautiful things about wintering seasons, for plants, is that that's the time where all the roots are growing. Like, it's all the underground kind of work. What if we could think about our lives when we don't feel very fruitful, and yet we could really believe, okay, I'm in a waiting season, I'm in an enduring season, but God's deepening a faith in me that is going to be needed for the next spring. So I just think there's a lot of hopefulness for us in that.